This April will be America's 99th anniversary since the United States entered World War I. Almost 100 years since we entered one of the most horrific wars in United States history. 116,516 men lost their lives for their country in this war. 3,500 of these are considered missing in action. Another 204,002 men were wounded as a result of this war. The total United States casualties, 320,518. This war was one of the most tragic wars in United States history, only below the American Civil War and World War II. The United States recognized 122 of the soldiers from World War I with the prestigious Medal of Honor. Of those 122, only one of the Army soldiers who received this honor for their actions in World War I was African American. This would be the earliest African American to ever receive the Medal of Honor. This is Freddie Stowers. Not very much is known about Freddie Stowers' life before he became a soldier. We are not even entirely sure what he looked like since there aren't any photographs of him. From what we do know, he seemed to live a fairly typical life for a man of his day. Freddie Stowers lived in southern United States post-Civil War. He was the grandson of a slave. He grew up in Sandy Springs, South Carolina. Sandy Springs was a typical quiet southern town that you would expect in the 1900s. Even though it was after the Civil War, America was still a very prejudiced society for an African American man to live in. As a young man, Freddie Stowers worked as a farmhand. It was a fairly common job for an African American living in the rural South to have at the time. In his late teens, he met a woman named Pearl. Pearl and Freddie soon fell in love and got married. They began to plan a life together. They soon added a little baby girl to their family. They named her Minnie Lee Stowers. Everything was perfect for a little while. Europe, 1917. While Freddie Stowers was settling into his new family roles, world events and tragedies were swirling around him. Germany had been attacking passenger and merchant ships from their U-boats. Hundreds of Americans were getting killed, even though America was neutral in the war. Germany's attack on the innocent resulted in the termination of diplomatic relations with the United States. Hours after the termination, Germany attacked and sank an American ship liner, the first of several events that would lead American armies to action. The following weeks, Germany sank 4 more American trade ships, killing hundreds of innocent Americans for a war they weren't fighting. February 1917. America began to see the reality of the world they were living in. The American government and armies began to prepare for war. April 1917. The United States President Wilson declared war on Germany. The United States joined the Allies in the fight against the Central Powers. The United States Army needed more men to fight, so they implemented the draft. This moment would change Freddie Stowers' life forever. Freddie Stowers was 21 years old at the time. Stowers was drawn in the first round of the draft. He was assigned to Company C, 1st of the segregated U.S. 371st Infantry Regiment, originally part of the 93rd Colored Infantry Division. On October 4th, 1917, Stowers' military career officially began. The next few months would prove testing for Stowers. He went through several phases of training to prepare him for combat. Stowers would develop the skills he would need for when he was called into battle. January 1918. Overseas at a battleground deep in the midst of war. France and Germany were struggling for the upper hand, and France was beginning to lose traction in the war. France requested for more men. America sent several of their predominantly African American infantry to help France. Of these, Stowers' infantry was included. Stowers' division worked under the French command while overseas. The prejudiced culture of the United States was not part of the French culture. The French and African American soldiers worked side by side. The French needed reinforcements, and a racist mindset would not help them win the war. Stowers' regiment worked under the leadership of General Mariano Gobet while in France. General Gobet was the commander of the French Army Red Hand Division. Stowers' division was seconded to his division. Freddie Stowers served here several months. He would ultimately give his life for his company and his country while serving here. Corporal Freddie Stowers worked in combat zones. His company became known for their extreme dedication and aggressive fearlessness. This dedication and fearlessness would soon become Freddie Stowers' legacy. September 28, 1918. Corporal Freddie Stowers was sent out to another battle, one that would be life-changing. His company was sent to the Champagne-Marie sector of France to attack the opposing military stronghold at Hill 188. The trek to the sector took them 72 hours. The men grouped and began to prepare for attack shortly after 0500 hours. Then, the attack began. The enemy troops led the French army to believe that they were surrendering by coming out of their trenches. The French company then came out of their trenches, and the German army began the attack again. The French army lost half its men in the first few moments. This is when Stowers bravely went above the call of duty and rallied the men to resume the attack and take control of the enemy. He led the men back into battle and crawled towards the German stronghold. The men began to take control of the German machine gun post. Stowers was hit in the hail of gunfire. He was bleeding profusely, but continued the attack with his company. When he could go no further, he encouraged his men to press on and win the battle. Stowers' company was able to take over Hill 188, thanks to the actions of Corporal Freddie Stowers, who passed away on that battleground, a true hero. After Freddie Stowers was killed in the line of duty, life had to go on. Later that year, the Allies were able to win the war. Freddie Stowers was buried at the Museum Oregon American Cemetery and Memorial. The remaining troops were able to return home to their families and loved ones. All of those that were touched by the life of Corporal Freddie Stowers fell back in their everyday routines and seemingly forgot about his legacy and his sacrifice for his country. But 73 years later, the paperwork requesting that Corporal Freddie Stowers receive the Medal of Honor for his actions was discovered. It had been lost for 73 years. April 24th, 1991. President George Bush presented Stowers' sisters with the Corporal Freddie Stowers Medal of Honor. Quote from the Medal of Honor citation. Corporal Stowers' conspicuous gallantry, extraordinary heroism, and supreme devotion to his men were all well above and beyond the call of duty, follow to the finest traditions of the military service, and reflect the utmost credit on him and the United States Army. Now, his legacy lives forever.